Hey everyone, thanks for learning to play games. My name is Lance, and in today's video, look at a brand new game coming to Gamefound called Lobotomy 2 Manhunt. This is a new one from Titan Forge Games. It is a 1 to 5 player game that takes roughly 1 to 2 hours to play, and is a fully cooperative game where all the players are working together to defeat whatever scenario or mission they've chosen to go on. So in the game itself, you are going to be playing patients of a psychiatric hospital, and you believe that all the doctors and state troopers and orderlies and all that are secretly demons and monsters trying to bring about the end of the world. And so you are set to try to break free and free your fellow patients so that you can defeat these forces and save the world. Now, of course, we're not sure if this is just in your head or if this is really happening, but you believe it is, so it must be true, right? So that is your task. You are going to be trying to save the world or meet different objectives depending upon the way you've chosen to play. And there's a couple different ways to play in this one. There will be a campaign, a narrative-driven campaign, or you can play in the sandbox mode where you're going to be choosing a number of daily nightmares that you're going to be facing. As long as you're able to complete those, then you're going to be facing off against the taskmaster or some other boss. If you're able to defeat them, then you have won this particular game. If not, better luck next time. I'm also going to have a link up in the top corner to a playthrough video if you'd like to see that in action, taking you through all of these different things. But in this video, I'm going to take you through the main features of the game, and also show you a sample turn to give you a good idea how this one plays and whether or not this is one you want to back on Gamefound. As always, if you find these videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider hitting that like button, subscribe to my channel. It's one of the easiest ways you can support channels like mine so we continue to grow and be able to produce this content. If you want to stay in all my videos, also consider hitting that bell so you know notifications anytime I release new stuff. Also, I will have a link in the description below if you'd like to check out the unboxing video, get close-ups of all these really cool miniatures. Now again, everything you see here is prototype and is subject to change. It'll look a lot better in the final production copy of the game, but this prototype is looking really sweet so far, so if you want to take a look at that, I'll have a link to that as well. So let's go ahead and head to the table. We'll see what this one's all about. First, let's start by looking at the different characters that players can play as throughout the game. Each one of these characters will have its own card, and will list the name of the character on the top, along with the number of hit points they have. Underneath their name is going to be a quest that they must meet in order to be able to flip over to their advanced side, which I'll cover this a little bit more in a minute. Then, each of the characters down the side of the card is going to have a number of different abilities that they can activate during their turn. These abilities will have a cost in insanity tokens that the player must spend in order to activate them. Some abilities will have a star next to their name, which means you can only use it once per turn, where other abilities will cost an action to use. Some abilities will not cost an action and can be triggered any number of times throughout your turn, as long as you can pay the cost of the ability. Each character is also going to have 4 different stats at the bottom of their card. These are Strength, Dexterity, Wisdom, and Imagination. Each one of these will also have a number next to it, which will be important when making checks against that stat. And then, of course, each one of our characters is also going to have a number of disorders, as these patients are part of an insane asylum. So each one will list a number of different disorders that they will have, and you'll draw from those decks at the beginning of the game, and we'll be able to collect more of those cards throughout the game by spending insanity tokens. And I'll cover those more in a minute. Then each character is also going to start with a number of items. You'll have your straitjacket, which is your standard defensive item, which is going to let you roll a blue die when defending, and can be upgraded a number of times by spending junk that you collect. Some will be generic and others will be specific junk to be able to add additional dice to this. And then we also have attack cards. The characters will always start with a basic attack card, and it'll show which of the different stats that it is going to work with. So with the spell scroll, this is going to work with the character's wisdom. And so when the character makes an attack with this, they're going to roll a number of dice based on their wisdom's ability. So they'll roll 3 of the green dice. This is also going to list any kind of abilities that this particular weapon has. For this one, it has a ranged attack, which is 0 to 2 spaces. And then again, at the bottom, we'll list any upgrades that this particular item can have. With this one, if I spend 2 of any junk, I can unlock this, which will let me, anytime I roll a lightning bolt, I can get another success out of it. And I'll go over that more a little bit later as well. So like I said before, each character is going to have a quest. When they complete that quest, and they can spend 6 insanity, and they have to be at a certain point within the scenario they're playing, they can flip their card over to their insane side. And this is going to give them a little boost in some of their stats, and will probably make some of their abilities a little bit better as well, maybe giving them more hit points and other effects. And each one of these characters, of course, is going to be based on some sort of pop culture thing, whether it is a movie or a game or a show or all kinds of different things. So it's fun to see who these characters are. So some of the characters that are going to be included in the game are going to be Gary, Maddie, Byron, and Hypno, Demi, Harold, Joanna, and Wicked Jimmy, among others. And then, of course, our characters can also get additional items. So, for example, with some of the different items for Ian here, we have like the Mage Staff, which is a little bit better, and you can see there's a number of different upgrades. Now, with these, some of these upgrades are going to have an S next to them, which means that your stat that you're using must be equal to this. So some of these are going to be a little higher. For example, with the Sword of Light, this one has a requirement of 4. So I couldn't use this on my regular side, but once I go insane, then I could use this as my wisdom is equal to this. And then I can start unlocking these, which will allow me to bump up this even further. We also have other items such as the Black Wand, and again, these are all for this particular character that he can use these effectively, but there's all kinds of other items that characters can use. And of course, there's other types of equipment as well, such as the Holy Hand Grenade, and this is going to allow you to use that to make an attack. Or we have the Keys of Hell, and this one's going to give you an additional star at certain points. The Lucky Charm, and even some additional armor such as the Rusty Chainmail. And of course, some of these items, again, can be upgraded to improve those items and give you even more abilities with them. Now, as I just mentioned, each one of the characters will have a number of disorders. These are going to be potentially aggression or OCD, schizophrenia or anxiety, neurosis. And each one of these will provide the player with different abilities that they can use throughout their turn. Some of these abilities will be passive. Others will have a cost in action points and will also have a cost in time. So the player has to place a number of time tokens on here to be able to use this, and then they will not be able to use this again until all those time tokens are removed. Some of them also, like I said, will cost action points and other things to be able to use, and all of these are going to be a little bit different. Now, of course, this wouldn't be much of a game if we didn't have some enemies to fight. So there are going to be 3 different types of enemies that we're going to be running into. You're going to have your basic monsters, which are going to be the Hellhound, the State Trooper, and then there's also going to be elite monsters. So this guy, this orderly here, is more of a elite basic kind of monster because you're going to be running into these 3 through most of the game. And there's also going to be other types of enemies that you're going to be running into as well. So each one of these enemies is going to list the type of attack it's going to do when it performs an attack action, as well as its defense, that when you attack it, what kind of defensive dice it's going to roll or other effects that it's going to have. And then each of these enemies is also going to have conditions if a player wishes to move out of a space containing that enemy. Each enemy is going to have a number of hit points as well as a movement value. And then throughout the game, it's a certain point during the game, the enemies are going to become empowered, which will flip their cards over to their empowered side. And then they're going to be a little bit more powerful with better attacks and defense and other conditions that they're going to have, your players are going to deal with. Next, you're going to have your elite monsters, and these are going to have all kinds of different effects as well. They're going to work the same way as your other monsters, but you're not going to see these as often, and they're going to have a lot more hit points and potential movement, as well as their attacks and defense are going to be considerably stronger than your regular enemies. The final enemy type you're going to run into are boss monsters, and these are the stuff of nightmares. These are true monsters to be respected and will be able to deal out tons of damage and are going to take everything your team has to bring down. Each one of them is going to have a big card that is going to outline all of their different attacks and abilities and defense, as well as their number of hit points. So as you can see here with this one, he is going to have a number of hit points based on the number of players times 10. So if you're playing with 4 players, he's going to have 40 points, and he's got some considerable movement even for being such a big guy. Then some of the boss monsters are also going to have their own deck of monster cards, and each one of these will outline the different conditions or attacks that that monster is going to carry out during that turn with the different effects and everything else. There's going to be a bunch of these included in the game, such as Buddy, or the Wendigo, or Pops, Hat Man, the Boogie Monster, and even the big guy himself. All right, so the final thing I want to show you is a sample turn to give you a good idea how this one plays. Now, I'm also going to explain a couple things before I get into that, just to go over some other stuff. So first off, with your game, you're normally going to be playing with between 3 to 5 characters. So if you're only playing with a couple players or by yourself, you're going to control multiple characters. So in this one, I'm only going to control 2 just to give you a good idea how this one plays, but normally I would be playing with 3 or more. So just keep that in mind as you watch this. Then let's go ahead and talk about the boards real quick, as they are going to be an important part of this, obviously. Each board is going to have a number of different spawn points on it that when during that step you'll reveal cards and place new enemies out on those different spawn points that are closest to the character that is going to be drawing for that. You're also going to have a number of these different locker tokens on the board, and you can search those during your turn if you're in the same space as those. You'll use your imagination, and then depending upon the results or number of successes you roll, you'll be able to choose how to spend those, and you can purchase each one of the things that is listed on there one time and only one time, such as weapons and equipment, potentially meds, and you might even be able to get some junk from it. And there'll be a number of different ways to get the different tokens in that. I'll go into that as we get into the game. So let's go ahead and move in. So first off, our characters are starting here in this particular little scenario that I've kind of set up, and they're trying to make it to the ends over here to exit off the board. Now again, normally depending upon the scenario you play or different things that you're doing, there'll be a number of different things that are going to trigger different events. Or for example, if you're playing in the sandbox mode, when you make it off of the very first tile, you're going to reveal your first daily nightmare scenario, and that's going to start giving you instruction on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, maybe different objectives that are going to be placed onto the board and stuff like that. So for this one, like I said, I'm just trying to show you the basics, so we're not going to have a lot of different things going on, and I just want to keep it nice and simple. So each of the rounds is going to be broken down into 2 phases, the player phase and the monster phase. So during the player phase, the very first thing you're going to do, which is going to be skipped during the first turn, is that you would move the first player marker to the next player in clockwise order, and then each player on their different disorders can remove one of their time markers per disorder. Currently, like I said, none of my characters have any, so we don't have to handle this, but I'll show you how that works a little bit later in the video. So from there, then it moves into the player turns, and during the player turns, you'll start with the player that has the first player token and then proceed in a clockwise manner. During each player's turn, that player will have 3 actions that they can spend to do a variety of different things. So for example, that player could choose to do a move action, which would get them 2 movement points that they can spend to move around the board from one space to another that's adjacent. You can also use those movement points to open doors that you're in the same space as. From there, then the player can choose maybe an attack action if they have either they're in a space with a monster or they have a weapon that has range, and they'll carry that out. And there's a number of other actions as well that they can do, such as their abilities or triggering different things on their disorder cards, being able to search if they're in a spot that has a locker token. So let's go ahead and get into it with my Gandalf character. Here, let's go ahead and start off with him. So I have an enemy over here that I could potentially target with this spell scroll, which would be probably pretty good. But I do want to try to search, as I do have this Delusions card, which is really good for that. It has a passive ability that lets me roll the brown dice instead of blue dice, or 1 brown dice instead of a blue die at least, which is considerably better. So I'm going to start off by spending my first action to move, which lets me move up to 2 spaces. I'm going to move 1 and 2 to get into this space. I cannot move diagonally. So I'm in there now. That was my first action. My second action, I'm going to go ahead and search that. So at this point, I'm going to flip this over and see what it has. So I can get a weapon, I can get a equipment, or I could draw from the medicine bag, and I'm also going to receive 1 junk for this just by doing this action. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that first from my junk bag, and I get some paper. All right. From there, then I'm going to go ahead and do my check. So this is going to use imagination. So I'm going to gain 3 imagination dice, as that's the number on my stat. Now, one of these I can switch over to brown, and then I'm going to go ahead and roll, and I'm looking for the stars, which are going to be found inside the shield, or they'll also be ones by themselves. So let's see what we get here. All right, so I got only 1. So let's go ahead and pretend that I did much better. So let's go ahead and say that I rolled this instead. So I ended up getting 6. Wow, I'm such a good roller. So now I can spend that. I can choose to spend that any way I want to. Any that I had that I don't spend, though, is going to be lost. So I could choose to buy a weapon and a pill if I wanted to, or a weapon and equipment, or equipment and a pill. So I'm going to go ahead and select a piece of equipment. So let's see what I get here. I have the Kevlar vest. This is going to bump my defense up quite a bit. So that's pretty good. And this card has 5 health. When you lose health, place damage tokens on this card instead, and there is no health remaining. Discard this. And I can also choose to discard junk to remove damage from this card. So that's really good as a defensive card. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't know if I'm going to equip it yet, as my quest for Ian is actually to die. So I actually want to take damage initially. So I think I'm going to just put this off to the side in my backpack for now, so that I can try to meet that quest. I have 3 points left, so I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and get a weapon too. See if I can get something good. I have a body piece. Interesting. This actually uses the ability, or my mind, or wisdom. So that is one of my strongest abilities. So that's good, and not too bad. So I think I'm going to go ahead and equip that instead. So I'll slide that over. And you can have 2 pieces or 2 weapons equipped at any time, and you'll have to choose which one you're going to use when you make an attack with that weapon. So that finishes off my second action. So I have 1 action left. So the body piece does not have range. So I'm going to go ahead and use my spell scroll to make an attack action. And I can go ahead and remove this token as well, as I can only do that once. So then I'm going to go ahead and use my spell. It has a range of 2, so I have range, and I have line of sight to that state trooper. So I'm going to go ahead and make an attack. So again, this is going to use my wisdom. So I'm going to roll 3 green dice. And then I'll check and see if I have any other bonuses or anything, which currently I do not. So I'm going to go ahead and give these a roll. And I've got 2 successes, and I also have 1 insanity, so I'm going to gain that. And then I also will roll for the trooper, so he is going to roll a brown and a blue. So we'll see if he blocks any, and he does. He rolls 3 successes on that, and he gets a lightning bolt, which currently for his defense he doesn't have any abilities with that. So he was able to defend against that, and I did not eliminate him. All right, so then that is the end of my turn, as I have nothing else that I can do at this point. I could potentially use an ability if I wanted to, but I don't think I'm going to do that right now, as I do have this eagle form that I could spend and do, but I think I'm going to hold off on that. All right, so from here then it's going to be Joanna's turn, so she's going to go ahead and start us off, and so I'm going to go ahead and spend my first action to move into this space with the state trooper. So with that, then I will make a attack with my sling. This is going to be a 0 to 1 ranged weapon. It lets me reroll 1 die, and it's going to use dexterity. So I'm going to gain 3 for my dexterity result, and the state trooper is going to roll his green, or his blue, and his brown again. So let's see if I get any better results here. And he still rolls really well at 3, but I did even better with 5. Again, I have a lightning bolt, which I cannot spend right now. If I upgraded my weapon, then that would have counted as an additional success. But I do not, so that is going to be enough to defeat him, as he only has 1 hit point, and I did 5 damage to his 3 defense. So he is going to be eliminated, and then I will also gain an insanity token for defeating him. So that was my second action, so I'm going to spend my last action to move again. So I'm going to move through those doors and up into this space here. Joanna wants to try to prevent damage, so I think I'm going to move here instead. All right. Once all the players have gone, then it's going to move into the monster phase. So the first step of the monster phase is the Hunt Master is going to move on his track. So he's going to do the first thing and move onto that deck of cards, and in later turns, he's going to start dealing those cards out and moving along that track. From there, then it's going to move into the boss monster step, where if there's any boss monsters out, then they are going to get to move and attack. There aren't any right now, so I don't have to worry about that. Next, then the basic enemies are all going to move, and they're going to move towards the closest character they can get to until they are in range. So first off, I'll go with my Hellhounds. They have a movement of 2, so he's going to move into there with Joanna. This Hellhound here will go through the door, and enemies can go through closed doors, so that is not a problem for them. The State Trooper is going to move 1 space towards them, and then the Orderlies are also going to move. The one's going to move towards Joanna going through that closed door, and then this one's going to move up 1 as well. Once you've resolved all of the enemy's movement, then you're going to spawn. Each character will draw a spawn card and resolve the effects, starting with the first player. So Ian's going to go ahead and draw, and he gets a Hellhound that's going to be placed in the yellow spawn point that's closest to him. So the spawn point closest to him that's yellow is going to be this one here. And then moving over to Joanna, she's going to draw, and we have a State Trooper that's going to be in red. Now there'll be some other spawn cards you're going to run into throughout the game. There'll be event cards, so if you're playing in a campaign or scenario, there are going to be certain things that'll trigger from those that will progress the story or have other effects. And then there's also going to be a reshuffle card where you're going to take all of the spawn cards you've used already, reshuffle those back into the deck. All right, so then the final step in this phase is that all of the enemies that have range are going to attack. So currently all we have are these 2 here, as the Hellhound is in the same space as Joanna, and the Orderly is in there as well. And the State Trooper does not have any range to attack Joanna. So first off, we have I'm going to go ahead and choose the Hellhound to take care of. So he's going to roll 2 green dice. If he rolls any lightning bolts, they're going to count as an additional success. Then Joanna gets 1 blue for her defense. And let's see if she has anything else here. She does have attachment issues. Before a monster attacks another character in 0 to 2, she can blink to their space and get attacked instead, adding an additional shield to that defense round, which currently I do not have. She's the one being attacked, so I don't have to worry about that. And she does get a bonus shield for every defense, so she already has 1 success on this. So let's go ahead and roll and see what we get. And she rolls 2 additional successes, so she has a total of 3 shields to the Hellhound's 3 attacks. So she has defended all of it, and her quest is to prevent 10 damage. So she's going to get 3 tokens towards that progress, as she has blocked or prevented 3 of those damage points. So she just needs 7 more, and she will have what she needs. From there, it's going to move on to the next enemy, which is going to be Orderly. The Orderly is going to roll a red and a green die, so that's even worse, as red can have some really nasty effects. And I'm going to again roll my blue. Now this time, since he is the second enemy attacking Joanna, and every enemy after that is going to add an additional success as well. So he is now automatically doing 1 damage on top of whatever he rolls. So let's see what happens. All right, so he rolls even really well again. So again, I hit my bonus defense. So I have a total of 3 defense. He's doing 3 attack plus that bonus attack. So now he's doing 4 to my 3. So again, I am going to prevent 3 of that. So I'll get 3 more of my tokens for that. But I'm also going to take 1 damage, as I was not able to stop all of it. So that has been resolved. And from there, then we're ready to move back into the next round. So again, like I said at the beginning of this one, during the next round, that would be the player turns or player phase. So then again, the first player token would move to the next player in clockwise order, which would be Joanna. And then if any of our players had used any of their disorders at this point, they would be able to take 1 of those tokens off per disorder that they used. And then from there, it'll move back into the player turns. And this is going to continue until either you're successful in completing whichever mission or scenario you've chosen to go on, or you're defeated, and that is the game. Now, there's a couple other things that I do want to point out with this. So with players, they're never eliminated from the game, at least early on. Now, once you go for like the Daily Nightmares, once the Taskmaster comes out or other boss monster comes out, if you're defeated, then you're eliminated. But in the regular games, if your character is defeated, then during the next time that that character would activate, they come back out in a random spawn point, and they're fully healed and all that again. Then they don't lose any of their items or anything else. As you probably noticed, Ian's quest is to die. Obviously, if you're eliminated, that would not be a good thing. But so yes, you will come back out, until there's certain points where you won't be allowed to. But throughout most of the game, you will be able to respawn and re-come out and continue on in your adventures to hopefully win the game. Okay, so I hope you found this video helpful in deciding whether or not this is one you want to back on Gamefound. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please post those in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer them. Or swing by Gamefound's main page and drop any questions you have there as well. I'm sure the creators would love to hear from you and are more than happy to answer any questions you have. Until next time, I'll see you later.